Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this webinar of StandICT 2029, and Happy New Year, actually, to every one of you. My name is Maria Giuffrida. Together with me today, the main speaker of this webinar is my colleague Teresa Ridolfi, and we also have some of our partners of StandICT connected from Digital SME Alliance and other partners that will support us in this session. So this session is dedicated to giving you further details and instructions on the submission process and the characteristics, let's say, of Open Call 1, which is already ongoing. But many of the information that we share today also apply to the future open calls. But we focus for now on the first open call. In this initial slide, you can see our housekeeping rules. So first information is that we are recording this session for you to rewatch afterwards, or for anyone who registered and is not able to attend today. And this session is an info session, so it means we will have a first part with the presentation by Teresa regarding all the characteristics of the open call. And then we have the open floor for the questions from you. However, I encourage all of you not to wait until the official Q&A session starts. Whenever you have a doubt or a question, you can use either the chat or the Q&A box to already type if you have, a burning question, so we can help already reply in writing and maybe, be more efficient so that we address as many questions as possible. I see already some of you greeting us in the chat, so welcome. Some old faces are here, we're happy, but maybe also new applicants. So I think we can start. So I leave the floor to Teresa, and welcome again. Enjoy the session.
Thank you, Maria. Hello, everyone. Hope you can hear me. Happy New Year. We are very happy to be here today with you and to start, to kick off, let's say, these new info sessions that we have taught for this new edition of StandICT 2029. So basically, the goal of these info sessions is, of course, let's say, to provide most of the information that can be useful for you to submit your applications. And the idea is to have them for each open call, meaning that, let's say, around 2 weeks, 10 days before the deadline of these open calls, we will have we will host these info sessions for you to be able to ask questions in case you have them, and also to showcase also maybe to new applicants how to submit their applications. So to start, let's say, from this first open call, as you know, it has been launched back in November last year, and it will close next Friday, so on the 16th of January at 17 Central European Time. Most of the topics, of course, that are related to this open call are listed on the call website, and they, of course, refer to the macro areas of the rolling plan for ICT standardization. And so you will be able, let's say, to check them both on the website, but also in the application form, as we will see later on. And as for the evaluation process of Open Call 1, let's say it will start more or less around 5 working days after the closure of this open call. So potentially, let's say 1 week after. And it will last more or less around 35 days, as usual, as it used to be also in StandICT 2026. So the results will probably be available during the week of the 23rd of February, just to give you, let's say, an idea of when you will have the final results of this first open call. So let's say we will, in this first part, we will mainly check the main novelties of 2029 open calls, but also how do they work. And so let's say we will have an overview of what are the most important things for you to know before submitting an application. And I will start with the type of contributions. So for Open Call 1, on the 2029 edition, applicants can basically request two different types of contributions, a long-term contribution and a short-term contributions. As you can see, we have some differences from StandICT 2026, as the long-term contributions can last for up to 9 months, and the maximum funding per call is 10,000 euros. So this means that all projects that, let's say, are last from 4 to 9 months are considered as long-term contributions. And of course, as for, let's say, the topics, the main description also of these long-term contributions, we expect, let's say, to have contributions to ongoing standards development, mainly as, let's say, chair, convener, rapporteur, or members of an SDO working group or technical committee. So also, for instance, commenting on standards developments and draft, attending meetings in case there are meetings as an observer, paying the payment of membership fees, and so on. And this kind of contributions, as I was saying, they will be, let's say, mainly for projects from 4 to 9 months. As for short-term contributions, on the other side, in this case, of course, we are looking, let's say, for contributions to standard documentations mainly. So, for instance, the liaison with working groups, the comments on some draft standards, participation also in meeting, of course, or membership fees in this case, but for shorter contributions, so let's say for shorter projects, up to 3 months. So this means that all the projects that will last, let's say, from 1 to 3 months can request this contribution, and the maximum funding for each call is 5,000 euros in this case. For what concerns who can receive, let's say, financial support, of course, StandICT can fund individuals or natural persons that are residing in European member states and associate countries from both the public and the private sector. And we are looking for standardization specialists, of course, but also standardization first-timers, let's say. So people who are willing, let's say, to increase their knowledge and their experience in the ICT standardization activities. And so let's say both these categories can, of course, be funded under our calls. And applicants can, of course, apply to all StandICT open calls, and they can be funded for a maximum of 50K over this current edition. This means that you have, let's say, this amount available of money that you can be funded with, of course, for all the open calls, so from open call 1 to open call 6. Of course, let's say we have a specific target, mainly European experts who have a profound knowledge in one of the topics of our open calls or have an experience for what concerns the developments of the standards in SDOs, in groups that have been organized by the European Commission, and so on. And also, of course, we are looking for people that are not already receiving supports from other instruments. For the proposed activities, you are requesting the money, of course. So you need, of course, to, let's say, request the funding for activities that have not been already funded by other initiatives, both European and national ones. So this is also very important. So as for the timeline of the fellowships, so as you know, also in the past editions, you have the opportunity to apply for a continuation of the previously funded activities. And this is something that is also feasible in StandICT 2029, as long as you are able to demonstrate that the activities you are requesting the funding are not already funded by other activities and are also not overlapping with the previous projects you have been funded under StandICT. So it is also important that you showcase a distinction, a clear distinction in the timeline of the new activities, but also that you showcase the improvements that have been made and have been performed thanks to the previous funded projects that you have been funded under StandICT 2026. So it is important, let's say, if you are planning to apply for a continuation of the project, that your project showcases the improvements that have been already implemented, and also that the timeline differs, of course, from the previous one and do not overlap with the previous one. Of course, copy and pasting previous funded applications is not ideal, even if they were successfully funded, as we need to see the improvements that have been made in the past months. As for Open Call 1, you can also, for Open Call 1, of course, of StandICT 2029, you can also, let's say, apply for a continuation, for instance, of a previous funded project in one of the open calls of StandICT 2026. It is though important, of course, to underline the differences and the new timeline, as I was saying before. As for what concerns in general the fellowship timeline, it's important that it is aligned, let's say, with the fellowship application. So let's say the earliest possible start date of the fellowship is the date when you create the draft application on the grants platform. So potentially, let's say, if you create a draft today, which is the 7th of January, your project can start from now until, I don't know, 9 months, 3 months, 6 months, depending, of course, of how long, let's say, your project needs to be, but also later on, not earlier. So you cannot, let's say, submit an application today with the start date of the 5th of January, for instance. And so, of course, this means that your start date can also be before, let's say, the announcement of the evaluation of the project results, because as I was saying, project results will be available probably at the end of February. As for the eligible costs, let's say these are the same of StandICT 2026, so they include the personal working effort, which cannot exceed, of course, the EU maximum daily rate of 450 euros. Then we have the travel costs, the event registration fees in case you need to attend some events organized, of course, by SDOs, and also the membership fees for both SDOs and SSOs organizations. Of course, you can also, let's say, have some activities in your project that have been already funded or are already covered the costs mainly by other resources. And so it is important that you request the money only for those activities that are not funded in any way for the moment. Of course, because the other ones, the ones that are already covered, let's say, are not eligible for funding. So there are, of course, some criteria for being considered eligible for the evaluation process of the StandICT open calls. First of all, in order to be considered eligible for evaluation, your application needs to be completed in all the sections, be submitted by an individual, of course, residing in European member states and the associate countries, and they must contain an updated version of your CV. As usual, let's say each proposal will be evaluated on the basis of some criteria. And in the 2029 edition, we have 4 main criteria. These criteria are all weighted equally. So this means that they have the same weight in the evaluation process. And they are a bit different, let's say, from the 2026 criteria. We have the criteria of excellence. So here, basically, we will assess the quality, the clarity of your application, the technical soundness, the understanding of the current standard landscape that your application should, let's say, demonstrate. We have the criteria of the impact. So how, let's say, your application, your project is supporting the EU policy priorities in the ICT domain. If your project is aligned with the ICT rolling plan topics, if it actually contributes to the ICT standardizations in the, let's say, EU landscape. And of course, if you are also the impact, let's say, another criteria which is very important is the leadership role that you might have in SDOs or in working groups. Then we have a third criterion, and this is new, is the implementation criterion. So here, basically, we will assess the feasibility, the clarity, and the realism of the of the plan of your application of your project, the work structure, the KPIs, and the budget. And then we have a fourth criterion, which is the inclusion and knowledge transfer. This is a brand new criterion, which was not, let's say, one of the criterion in 2026. And here, basically, we will assess how the applicant promotes the inclusion and the knowledge sharing in ICT standardization. So all these criteria have a weight of 25%. So this means that they are all weighted equally. And as usual, as it was also in 2026 edition, all applications are awarded with a score from 0 to 10, and evaluations are conducted by 3 independent experts, which are part, of course, of the external pool of evaluators, with a fourth person that will do, of course, the quality check of the evaluation of your application. So for the general information, let's say about the open calls, more or less, these are the most relevant things that we needed to assess. The next part is now focused, of course, on the platform, the Trust Grants platform, how to use it and how to submit your application. So we can now check altogether how to submit your application. So as usual, as you know, you need to log in the StandICT.eu website with your credential, and then you need to access to the grants platform, where you will see the application form of Open Call 1 for StandICT 2029. So this is the application form. Of course, you will need, let's say, to first of all assess a couple of things. The first question is that you need to acknowledge that you are not enrolled or contracted by us as an external evaluator for 2029 open calls, because in 2029 open calls, evaluators are not eligible as fellows. So this means that if you have already been enrolled as an evaluator for StandICT 2029 and you have already signed the contract as an evaluator, you cannot apply to any of the open calls that we are having in this edition. If you want to be a fellow instead of being an evaluator, you need to assess this and to decide this, let's say, and also inform us before the beginning, let's say, of the first evaluation of Open Call 1. And so we will need to know this in the upcoming weeks, in case there are some evaluators who, for instance, are willing, let's say, to submit an application for the open calls. We would need to know this in advance. After having assessed this, let's say, first question, then you will also need, of course, to acknowledge that you have read and understood the guidelines for applicants for fellowships, in particular for what concerns the eligibility criteria. And here we have also added, let's say, the link, the guidelines, which are also available on Zenodo and have been published, I think, around November, yes, more or less. And so let's say also this document is very important for you to be able to understand how to submit an application in a correct way. Then we have, of course, the main, let's say, informations, the most relevant ones that we need from you for your application, the title of the fellowship project, of course, the type of grant. So if you want a short-term or a long-term contribution, the project start and end date. Then we have, of course, some general information about your gender, your position in company and organization, your phone number and LinkedIn profile. And then we are let's say, moving to the topics of your project. So here you can identify the central policy area of the ICT rolling plan that your application wants to address. So in this case, you have to choose between the 5, let's say, main macro areas of the ICT rolling plan. Then you need to address the main topic of the proposal, which is a one-choice question. So the main topic can be only one. But of course, your proposal can also have other topics that can be relevant. And here you can add maximum 3 topics. Then we have some questions related to the double funding, let's say, issues mainly. So we are asking you whether your project is already supported by other ongoing activities within the EU-funded project areas. We are also asking the role that you are having in the working group or the technical committee you are referring to in this application. And this is very important information. If you have already submitted or you plan to submit the same proposal to other instruments, and if you are currently receiving co-funding to work in standardization from a commercial point of view. Then we move, let's say, to the application form itself, so the section where we need most of the informations. So we have section 1 on the excellence, where you will mainly, let's say, provide the overall concept, the objective, and the approach of your application. And in this case, we have two questions, one on the objective and the concept behind the proposed activities. And also you need to explain why this activity is necessary and is important. And then another question, which is more related, let's say, on the current context. So here we would need you to describe the current state of the art and also to explain the envisioned area and relevance of the target ICT standards development activities and the main challenges from a European perspective. So we would need a bit of context here. And then we would move to section 2 on the other side on the impact. So here basically we would need to better understand the contribution in the EU landscape, the reference standards, and the working in the respective, let's say, working groups. So here you would need to describe the expected impact of the proposed activity on, of course, on your chosen topic, and why it is relevant to European policy objectives. We would also need to know how this activity concretely contributes to the international ICT standards. And then you would also need to indicate the specific reference standards or the work items, for instance, that can be under development, let's say, to which, let's say, your project will contribute. Also, of course, then you will need to select the main standard setting organizations that you will contribute to, and the working groups, of course. Sorry. Then we have another question on, let's say, the participation to the target standardization bodies. So if you are already participating to national standards body or national committees. And then also, of course, another question on which will be the main standard groups or standard organization that you will contribute to. And if this activity address any specific action points of the ICT standardization rolling plan. Then we have the section on the implementation. Here, basically, we will need to have a work plan showcased with the KPIs, the concrete deliverable, and the concrete outputs of your application. And this is, let's say, simply indicated in the first two questions of section 3. And then we have section 3.3, which is based on the budget that you will need. Of course, for each cost item, we would also need a description and a justification of these cost items, more or less. Of course, it can also be, let's say, something not that much precise, because most of the costs can be also in the future. And so we don't need, let's say, the exact amount. Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm a bit sick today. So we don't need the exact amount of money, let's say, that you need to deliver for this project, but let's say an idea of the budget is more than fine as far as it is, let's say, justified. And then we will have the fourth section of the expertise. So here, basically, this section is basically, let's say, as it was a part of your CV, only focused on ICT standardization. So here you need to summarize your expertise in ICT topic areas, and also your key expertise in standardization in general. And we would also need then your short professional bio, let's say, of course, beyond this standardization project and the ICT standardization areas in general. We have also added then one question on, let's say, the length of your expertise in ICT standards. So if you are a newcomer and you are working, let's say, on ICT standards from less than 2 years, if you are an intermediate, more or less experienced, so up to 6 years, or if you are well experienced and you are working in ICT standards since more than 6 years. 6 years. And then we have a final question on the sharing of the expertise, let's say. Then we have, of course, the section where you need to upload your CV. And eventually, if you have any additional attachments, you can also, of course, upload them here. And then the last question is related to the mentorship program of StandICT. So if you have already participated in 2026 edition, you can, let's say, ask this question in the final part. Of course, as usual, you can also start your application and save it in draft, and then you can continue, let's say, to modify it afterwards. But as usual, and this was also something that we already, let's say, said in 2026, it is very important to submit your application, if possible, at least one day before the deadline, because usually the main issue here is that in the last, let's say, hours of the StandICT open calls deadline, we always receive a lots of submissions, and this can cause, of course, some problems on the platform. So it is very important for those that already have an idea of what they want to do, and they already have, let's say, a quite advanced draft of their application, to submit it a bit earlier, just to be sure that everything works fine. Okay. So moving forward on the next part, let's say, of this info session, very briefly, let's say what you can do if you don't think you have enough time to apply to the first open call. Don't worry, of course, because we are going also to have other open calls. This is more or less the timeline of the future open calls, which is also available on the website. So open call 2 will probably start approximately around February and will close in April, because each open call will last for 60 days. And in this edition, we are planning to have 6 of them. So this is more or less, let's say, the overview of when these open calls should be launched. So we will probably have 3 more in 2026 and then 2 in 2027. But also all the dates with the timeline are available on our website. Here are some useful links to you. First of all, we have the fellowship page on our website, where we have the timeline of the next open calls, but where we also have, let's say, most of the information related to StandICT open calls, which can be very useful. We have, most importantly, the guidelines for applicants to fellowship, which is a document that we have created and it's available on Zenodo, where we are listing, let's say, all the most relevant information that you need to know as an applicant, but also as a fellow, so if you get funded. And then we have finally the link for applying to Open Call 1. So to the page of Open Call 1. I think we can move to the Q&A session now. Maria, I don't know if we have questions.
Yes, we've had a few questions. I have answered various questions in the chat already. I would suggest let's start with the questions that I see now in the Q&A as open questions, because and so I will reply by voice to these. But then regarding others that I have typed an answer for, if the my answer is not clear or whatever, we can retackle them again. So I can start with Mona Gassemian question. Could you please clarify how to include that the requested budget is not covered by any other funding sources? Are there specific statements we can add to support this, and in which section? Okay. So this is in the very beginning of the application. Maybe Teresa, you can project the application form again, where we have 3 or 4 questions that ask if you are, you see this one. Have you already submitted or do you plan to submit the same proposal to similar instruments? Okay, if you click no, or if you click no in the other question, are you receiving co-funding or support to work in standardization commercially? It is already a declaration that don't have other funding. In case you have other funding, you will need to provide, clarifications and specify that what you are asking to StandICT is something different, an activity that is maybe complementary to the one that you are already being covered for. In some cases, it can happen that maybe your company, if you are an employee, pays for some of the cost. So in that case, you will need to declare it, and in the requested amount, you don't ask for the type of activity that is covered by another funding.
And also, in case, Maria, if I can add, maybe
Yes.
in case you, let's say, are, let's say, receiving co-funding commercially or from another project, if you select yes to all these questions, then another question appears, and here you can actually specify, for instance, the funding instrument, the call name, in case you are funded by another project or another call, or also in case you are receiving co-funding commercially, you can add the name of the organization who is providing you with the support and so on. So this can all be justified, let's say, in the application form.
Okay. Then, Mona, if you have doubts, just write again. We can go to the next question by Abella. Can activities not related to a formal SDO be supported, specifically if you want to create agile alternatives to SDO? Yes, it's possible. You can specify this in your application. Normally, I must say, in terms of historical data, the majority of applications that we receive, and of course, then the majority of funded applications are the ones who contribute to formal SDO, and specifically international one, because that's the mission of StandICT. But this doesn't mean that you cannot, apply for contributing to another type of SDO. Actually, the list that we have on our application form is very comprehensive, it's very long. And so you can select from there. Perfect. Then we have a question in the chat from Alpo. What happened to the max 3,000 euro travel grant, which was ideal for me? I think maybe you are referring to the one shot.
One shot, yes.
Right. So we have decided to remove the one-shot grant type because actually for statistical reason it was not very requested by the community. So we wanted to simplify the options, also because we have not presented this today, but in the future of StandICT, we will have new types of open calls. So we wanted, to rationalize a little bit. We conducted a consultation at the end of 2026 edition to, hear the opinion of the potential applicants in our community, and so we decided to discard this. However, Alpo, this doesn't mean that in this case you cannot apply again, because you can just apply for the short term and select a shorter amount or a shorter duration. As Teresa was saying, the short term actually can last also only 1 month, so you can use that. We just wanted to get rid of an additional type of not so used grant that is actually already covered by the short term.
Yes, and also, if I may add,
Sure.
let's say for what concerns the budget, you do not need to ask money, of course, for each cost item. So you can also request money only for event fee or membership fees, for instance, or only for travel if it's needed. So there is no need to ask money, let's say, for everything. So in case you need, for instance, 3,000 euros for travel, you can select the short-term application, which is now actually, it has the same, let's say, duration of the one shot, if I remember correctly. So let's say it's more or less the same thing. And also for those who used, let's say, to apply for 6 months, also this thing is still possible, because you can apply for long-term applications. But also in this case, you do not need, your project doesn't need to last 9 months. Let's say it's not a mandatory duration. It can also last 6 months. So more or less, let's say these things are covered in 2029. They are only, let's say, showcased differently.
Yeah, and also regarding this budget part, to connect with the question that was asking about multiple sources of funding, this is also the case that if you are receiving funding for a category of cost by another source, you put zero in that source. For instance, if your company pays for your time, for your personal working effort, you ask zero there. But they don't cover travel, you ask only for travel. Okay, so that's also a way to um, manage the fact that maybe some part of the cost is covered by other sources. I wanted also to take the opportunity to say something about the new criterion that we have added, because there was a question that by Sabine, and I, provided a brief text in the chat, but maybe it's a good opportunity to explain it as well. So this was decided together with our granting authority, that's of course the European Commission, because we wanted to, facilitate the fact that more and more people and different type of people and stakeholders can have access to this type of funding and can become, part of the standardization domain. So we included this inclusion and knowledge transfer because on the inclusion part, we will provide, a better score to applicants that are, not the usual suspects, let's say. So people that maybe have less experience or people that have less, maybe younger or women, etc., because these categories in standardization are less represented, or people that come from SME, startups, because we want to, make sure that every type of stakeholder in standardization consensus is is represented, but we also add the knowledge transfer because, of course, we know that many of our applicants are still people that have already experience or maybe do not, match the criteria of the inclusiveness that we want to increase. And so they can compensate and so still have a good score here by ensuring the knowledge transfer. So by ensuring that if they have a lot of experience, they've been there for a lot of time, etc., they have a plan to pass on this knowledge. So we make sure that there is a sort of, generational turnover, or, there is a sort of, passing the knowledge to other people to make the process more comprehensive. And so you will have questions specifically on this part, and it's weighted as the same of the others. So it's a way for us to make sure that we are more accessible to everyone interested, basically. Then I see a new question from Joachim. If we apply for travel costs, how do we have to prove it at the end? Okay, so this budget that we give you is a lump sum. So you don't need to give us like receipts or things like this. It's a lump sum, but you will be requested in any case to provide us with the reporting. Our partner from Australo, Mona, will be in touch with the people who are funded. Because if you have a long-term application, you will need to have intermediate reporting and final reporting. If you have a short-term application, only final reporting, and you will need to, explain everything that you have done. Then let's see. If we have other question. So, Sabine, I agreed to participate in the mentorship last time, but wasn't asked to be a mentor for someone newer to standardization. Does there or real mentorship? Okay, so we have also Justina here from Digital SME who can explain more about the mentorship program. But what I can say is that for this first open call, if you have participated in the program, this will count, okay, in the first open call because we don't have the new mentorship program yet. So we will consider participation in the previous edition. Of course, previous edition, we didn't have the inclusion criteria, so it was not the fact that we had, newer people, but you were still matched with someone who had less experience or that needed some help. From second open call, instead, we will have a new mentorship program. And so the score will be counted only if you apply to the new mentorship program. For this time, we consider the past. I don't know, Justina, if you want to add anything about the mentoring.
Thank you very much already for all the questions and all your answers, colleagues. And indeed, Sabine, we know that a few mentors unfortunately were not matched because we have more mentors than mentees, and some of your expertise was not needed in that specific moment. But indeed, the readiness and request to participate will count in this first open call. And then, of course, for the future, we will try to do even better matching, and hopefully there will be no unmatched experts.
Perfect. Then
We have some questions in the Q&A box.
mhm.
One is about the possible additional documents that you can add to the application form. Well, here I would say you can add maybe publications or maybe some papers you have or some documents that might, let's say, support and prove, of course, your experience in the ICT topic that you have selected, for instance, for the open call. But in general, anything that is related to your experience in the field of ICT standardization, I would say, is valid. as, let's say, an additional document to the CV. Then we have another one. My project is about accessibility. Does that count as inclusion, or is that criterion about the applicant only?
Yes, in this case, the criterion is about the applicant only. But I see in some cases, you can showcase proof, let's say, of being inclusive, also regarding the type of standard that you are working on or the type of topic that you are addressing, because I think you can use section 4 to highlight this, that your topic is about accessibility. So you mention it again somewhat, but it's not formally included, let's say, the topic as part of inclusion, because in our case, inclusion, we meant inclusion of people in participating in standardization. If accessibility that you mean is, to allow more people to participate in standard, I think it's a good idea to specify again, and highlight the relevance for inclusion of the topic of your project again in section 4. Okay, because what we as you see, the application form is already divided some way in sections. So section 1 is used mostly to score criterion 1, section 2 for criterion 2, etc. So section 4, the question of section 4 are those that count towards the inclusion. And so whatever information in the open box you think is useful, you can add it.
Thank you, Maria. We have one last question. Are applications less likely to be successful if an applicant has not participated in the mentorship program in the past?
Okay, Ben, thank you. No, it's not the case, because as you see, we have 4 criteria and all the criteria weight the same. What we mean by, using the mentorship as one of the questions is that we, of course, want to acknowledge the work of people that have, been trained or have participated in the mentorship. But still, in that same criterion, you can have other ways to improve that, to show that you have done training, that you have, interacted with other type of people. So it's not that you are less likely. You have all the other question in the criteria to prove your ability to transfer knowledge, let's say.
Thank you, Maria. I don't know if you have any other questions, so I wanted to showcase again the slide with the useful links that we have provided. Apart from the fellowship page, of course, and the page where you can apply for Open Call 1, it is very important to check out the guidelines for applicants to fellowship and to read them carefully before submitting an application. This is a very warm suggestions that we make to all the applicants, both new and old ones. Also, a reminder, of course, if possible, please to submit the applications a few days earlier, if possible, than the final deadline, because it is almost, it's quite probably that we can have some problems in the last day, in particular if everyone is applying at the same time, let's say during, let's say, the afternoon of Friday, the 16th of January. So please, if you can submit applications a bit earlier, this can be useful, of course. Also because we won't be able to accept applications that, let's say, come after 17 p.m. in the Friday. So please be aware also of this. Of course, then if you have any other questions or doubts in the upcoming days, also while preparing your project, your application, you can write an email to info@StandICT.eu or also directly to me and Maria, and we will try to reply to you as soon as possible, of course. The slides, of course, will be shared after the webinar together with the registration of the webinar. They will both be available on the event webpage, so you can also double check them there if it's needed. I don't know if you have any other questions. Otherwise, here you can see our emails in case you would need them in the upcoming days.
I think, sorry, Teresa, I'm seeing now a question from Jose. In case you take part in different projects and SDO related to IT, how do you get funded? Should different? Yes, Jose, you can submit different applications even in the same open call or different open call, depending. But of course, they don't have to overlap, so the activities need to be different, okay? But yes, you are allowed for multiple submissions.
Yes, it's important that multiple submissions are, of course, if they are, let's say, if they have the same timeline, they need to be, of course, on different topics. Otherwise, they would be considered as an overlap and a request of double funding. If they are for the same activity, we would need to have different timelines among the two different applications. And yes, as I was saying, the deadline for Open Call 1 is next Friday, the 16th of January at 17 Central European time, in case you have any other doubts. Okay, I think we don't have any other questions, any other doubts. Thanks to everyone who attended this first info session. I hope it was helpful for you all. And as I was saying, yes, in case you have any additional questions, please do not hesitate to contact us, and we will try to reply as soon as possible. Thanks a lot to everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.